There is a particular kind of exhaustion that lets you keep your job, answer texts, smile at the right moment, and still feel strangely absent from your own life. It looks functional from the outside. That is what makes it dangerous. You wake up, and before anything has even happened, your body already feels like it is bracing for a day it does not want to explain. You move through the morning automatically. You say, "I'm fine," in the same voice that has protected you for years. And maybe that is the part no one sees. You are not falling apart in some obvious way. You are carrying yourself so well that even your suffering has become difficult to detect. So maybe this is not ordinary stress. Maybe this is what it feels like when a survival self has been worn for so long that the body begins to reject it before the mind is ready to let it go. And if this video found you now, it may not be by accident. It may be because something in you is finally too tired to keep calling this strength. This video only needs to find you once. Because once you see what this exhaustion really is, you may never be able to call it just stress again. The frightening part is that this kind of exhaustion does not always ruin your life in obvious ways. Sometimes it lets you keep everything looking almost intact. You still make the meeting, you still answer the text, you still say "sounds good" in the tone people trust. You still stand in the kitchen, still drive to work, still remember what needs remembering. But there are moments, small, almost embarrassing moments, when the performance slips just enough for you to feel it. Sitting in your parked car for an extra minute because you cannot bear becoming the next version of yourself yet. Staring at your laptop before opening it, as if your face needs a second to catch up. Lying down at night and realizing your body is horizontal, but nothing inside you has actually landed. That is usually how it begins. Not with a breakdown, with friction. A jaw that never fully unclenches, shoulders that do not know how to come down, a breath that stays shallow even in safe rooms, a chest that feels busy when the room is quiet, a stomach that remains slightly watchful, as if peace is a trick and something will be required of you the moment you soften. Not all exhaustion means collapse. Sometimes it means your body has started rejecting a life your personality is still managing beautifully. Sometimes the role is still functioning long after the organism underneath has begun to whisper, in the plainest language it has. This costs too much. And because it does not look dramatic, people rarely call it what it is. They call it you. That may be the loneliest part. The world often loves you most when your pain is convenient for other people, when it makes you easy to work with, easy to rely on, easy to place in the role of the one who can handle it. The one who does not need much, the one who stays composed, the one who does not make the room heavier than it already is. So they call you strong, calm, mature, independent, private, low maintenance, hard to read, but somehow respectable for it. They tell you you are steady, solid, easy to be around. Maybe they even say they admire how little drama you bring into a room. And maybe a part of you accepts those words because, on the surface, they are not entirely false. You did learn how to carry discomfort without spilling it everywhere. You did learn how to read the weather in a room before you spoke. You did learn how to make yourself digestible. You learned how to need less, explain less, react less, ask for less. You learned how to stay useful while disappearing just enough to keep things smooth. But the same adaptation people praise in one setting, they punish in another. Then you become detached, hard to reach, too guarded, too sensitive, too much, too cold, too complicated, not open enough when intimacy asks for softness, not simple enough when someone wants easy closeness. You are praised when your self-erasure is comfortable, then blamed when the human cost of it starts to leak through. And this is what those labels almost never touch. What they called calm may have been compression. What they called independence may have been a nervous system that learned early that needing people was expensive. What they called maturity may have been premature self-suppression. What they called easy to love may have meant you became skilled at taking up less space. What they called easy to work with may have meant you were trained to translate your exhaustion into politeness. This becomes even harder to see in a culture like ours. Because American life does not usually ask whether a trait is keeping you alive inside. It asks whether it keeps the machine moving. Are you productive, pleasant, professional? Can you absorb pressure without slowing everyone else down? Can you keep smiling in the meeting, answer the email, say no worries when your body is already running on emotional debt. That is how the reliable child becomes the reliable adult. And then the reliable adult becomes the person everyone counts on precisely because no one has to look too closely. Your suffering does not disappear. It just becomes employable, socially acceptable, easier to praise than to understand. And this is where Jung becomes useful, not because he romanticizes pain, but because he names what the world keeps misreading. What if the problem was never that you were too much, too guarded, too sensitive, or too hard to understand? What if the real problem was that most of your life got interpreted from the outside? Carl Jung would have started there. Not with judgment, not with a personality label, but with a quieter, harder question. What is living underneath this? What has been shaping your choices, your closeness, your reactions, your fatigue, long before you had words for it? Because that is the part most people never get taught. What stays unconscious does not stay still. It keeps choosing. It keeps steering. It keeps arranging your life from underneath the surface. It decides which text feels heavy before you open it. Why some people make you over-explain and others make you disappear. Why you can want love and still tense when it gets too near. Why rest can feel boring, guilty, or slightly unsafe. Why you keep ending up in emotional climates that feel strangely familiar, even when they hurt. And when a pattern keeps returning like that, people usually call it fate. They say, this is just how I am. This is just my type. This is just what happens to me. Jung would say, maybe not. Maybe what you call fate is an unseen part of your life that has been repeating itself for years because no one ever helped you bring it into the light. And this is where his idea of the shadow becomes much more human than people think. The shadow is not only rage, selfishness, or darkness. Sometimes the shadow is made of the gentlest parts of you, the parts that once became too risky to show. Your need, your tenderness, your fear, your grief, your wish to be comforted without having to earn it first, your anger at being the one who always had to understand, your exhaustion with being good, easy, useful, and emotionally literate while secretly starving for somewhere to collapse. Those parts do not disappear just because they were unwelcome. They go underground. Then years pass, and what was once buried starts to feel unfamiliar, embarrassing, weak, not me. That is one of the cruelest things survival does. It hides something human, then teaches you to call the hiding your identity. And your nervous system helps keep that arrangement in place. Because your nervous system is not asking, is this response wise? It is not asking, is this beautiful? It is not asking, will this make me whole? It is asking something much more immediate. Will this keep me safe enough? That is why adaptation can look so intelligent from the outside and feel so lonely from the inside. If your body learned early that mistakes change the temperature of love, it may push you to over-prepare until exhaustion starts to feel like responsibility. If it learned that your feelings complicated other people, it may flatten your reactions before you even know what you feel. If it learned that closeness comes with unpredictability, it may keep one hand on the exit even while you are saying, I miss you too. If it learned that rest is when you finally feel everything, it may keep you busy just to spare you the impact of your own inner life. That is not weakness. That is pattern. That is adaptation. That is the economy of safety. And it also explains why people repeat what hurts them, not because pain is what they want, because pain they recognize can feel easier to manage than peace they do not trust. Familiar pain has rules. It has a map, you know how to move inside it. But unfamiliar peace, real rest, honest love, being seen without performing, those things can feel strangely expensive to a system trained on vigilance. Even goodness can feel destabilizing when your body has spent years preparing for loss, pressure, or disappointment. So, this is the line that matters. It is not a flaw, it is a function. But functions built for survival do not retire just because your life changed. They keep protecting you inside rooms that are no longer dangerous. They keep bracing inside conversations that are no longer attacks. They keep editing you down long after the original reason is gone. And if that function once saved your life, but now keeps taking pieces of it, then the question is no longer whether it made sense. The question is how much it has already cost. And this is where it becomes expensive. Not in theory, not in childhood language, not in the abstract, where everything can still sound insightful and far away. In your actual life. In the email you answer with perfect professionalism while feeling nothing. In the way you say, of course, when your body means, please do not ask me for one more thing. In the 5 extra minutes you sit in your car after work, staring through the windshield, because you cannot bear becoming useful again that quickly. This is how adaptation survives into adulthood. It becomes impressive. At work, it can look like excellence. You are responsive, composed, dependable. You know how to make yourself legible under pressure. You know how to keep your face neutral, your voice steady, your deadlines met. You know how to become the person people do not worry about. The one who can absorb tension without spilling it onto the table. The one who sends the clean email, fixes the problem, smooths the room, stays productive, says no worries before anyone has to feel guilty. And the more beautifully you function, the less anyone notices what functioning is costing you. That is the cruelty of this kind of competence. It hides the wound by turning it into value. Your usefulness becomes camouflage. Your calm becomes a public service. Your reliability becomes the reason no one looks twice. People trust you because you do not break in front of them. They lean on you because you look structurally sound. And after a while, your life fills up with responsibilities that fit your adaptation perfectly and leave almost no room for a self beneath it. So, the workday ends, but you do not. You drive home, park, turn off the engine, and stay there. Phone in your hand, keys still in the ignition, groceries in the back seat. Nothing visibly wrong. No disaster, no tears. Just one quiet fact. You do not have the strength to become the next version of yourself yet. The one at home. The one who answers kindly. The one who asks how everyone is doing. The one who empties the dishwasher, texts back, remembers the appointment, calls their mother, makes dinner, smiles without making anybody else nervous. This is not collapse. This is overdraft. And love does not necessarily save you from it. Sometimes love is where you feel the cost most clearly. Because in relationships, you can do everything that looks like closeness and still remain unreachable in the place that matters. You reply. You show up. You sit beside someone. You say the right thing. You remember what they told you. You hold them when they cry. You even miss them when they are gone. And still, when intimacy deepens, something in you tightens. Not because you do not care, because care is not the same thing as safety. So you answer the text, but keep your nervous system on a leash. You lie next to someone you love and still cannot fully drop your guard. You hear, "Talk to me," and feel your chest get smaller instead of softer. You want closeness, but once it arrives, your body treats it like extra labor. That contradiction is exhausting. From the outside, it can look like distance, coldness, inconsistency, difficulty. From the inside, it feels much less elegant than that. It feels like trying not to disappear while also trying not to drown. It feels like being physically present and psychically underwater. It feels like someone reaching for you and your body calculating the cost before your heart even gets a vote. It feels like hearing, "You can relax," and realizing you do not know how. That is what people miss when they say you are hard to reach. Sometimes you are not withholding. Sometimes you are surviving in place. And your body keeps the bill. Not in ways dramatic enough to stop the world, in ways constant enough to shape your whole life. You sleep, but it does not feel like you went anywhere. Morning arrives, and your system is already halfway dressed for impact. Your jaw is holding a meeting before you are fully awake. Your shoulders do not drop, they negotiate. Your stomach stays slightly alert, as if peace is a setup. Even rest can feel like exposure. Even a free weekend can feel oddly heavy, because when nothing is demanding you, all the unfelt things begin walking toward you at once. So you stay busy. Not always because you are ambitious. Sometimes because movement is easier than contact. Sometimes folding laundry feels safer than feeling your life. Sometimes answering emails feels safer than answering yourself. Sometimes exhaustion is easier to manage than emptiness. And the culture around you will often reward that arrangement. American life is very good at mistaking self-abandonment for professionalism. It rewards the flattened voice, the efficient smile, the person who can keep producing under emotional strain, the one who does not bring too much interior life into the room, the one who remains pleasant, employable, emotionally regulated enough not to interrupt the machine. So high-functioning pain gets praised. It gets promoted. It gets called maturity. It gets called leadership. It gets called resilience. And "I'm fine" becomes fluent long before it is true. That is why some people are not falling apart. They are disappearing in ways the culture rewards. Their calendar is full, their bills are paid, their responsibilities are handled, their relationships may even look stable from a distance. Life is still moving. Meetings happen, groceries get bought, laundry gets done, holidays come and go, photos get taken, plans get made, deadlines get met. But none of that guarantees presence. A life can remain fully operational while the self inside it grows dimmer by the year. That is the part almost no one sees. Not because it is invisible in some mystical sense, because it is hidden inside normalcy, inside routines, inside competence, inside all the little performances that keep a life running while quietly editing the person out of it. So no, the deepest cost is not just fatigue. It is not even anxiety. It is the slow, almost undetectable grief of realizing that the adaptation worked so well, it began to look like your personality. And once that happens, the danger is no longer just that you are tired. The danger is that you may start calling the thing that is draining you who you are. And this is the part that hurts in a different way. Not because it explains your symptoms, because it starts to explain you. If you have been in adjustment for too long, people stop seeing it as adjustment. They start calling it your personality, and after enough years, you start calling it that too. You become the one everyone trusts, the one who handles things, the one who does not need to be chased down, reassured, cleaned up after, or emotionally translated. In your family, you are the one who stays reasonable. In your friend group, you are the one people vent to because you know how to listen without making it about yourself. At work, you are the one who can be counted on to keep your tone steady, your face neutral, your feelings professionally edited. And because you carry yourself well, people stop checking on you closely. That is one of the loneliest things about being high-functioning. The better you get at holding yourself together, the less anyone asks whether holding yourself together is hurting you. The more fine you look, the fewer real questions you get, not because people are evil, because your competence reassures them. Your calm lets everyone relax, your self-containment keeps the room comfortable. So the person who is most trusted often becomes the person least examined. You know the role. You are the reasonable one, the mature one, the one who can see both sides, the one who does not ask for much, the one who is easy. The one people describe with admiration because you never seem like too much. And maybe no one would guess that under all that reasonableness, you are often the tiredest person in the room. No one would guess how many times you answered with perspective when what you really needed was to fall apart without having to explain yourself first. No one would guess how often you made other people feel safe while you quietly went without being held. No one would guess that being low maintenance did not always come from peace. Sometimes it came from learning how to abandon yourself before anyone else had the chance. And then something even sadder happens. People start loving what your adaptation does for them. Not you in your fullness. Not you in your contradiction. Not you in your need, confusion, dependency, hunger, anger, or grief. They love how easy you are to place, how little trouble you cause, how well you read the room, how quickly you smooth yourself down, how rarely you force anyone to deal with the raw version of what things cost you. So you become appreciated, but not always known, and there is a very particular pain in that. To be thanked, trusted, relied on, chosen, respected, and still feel unseen in the place that matters most. To watch people feel safe with you while knowing that part of the reason they feel safe is because you have spent years making sure your harder edges, heavier needs, and less convenient truths do not spill into their hands. That kind of appreciation can feel warm. It can also feel devastating. Because being appreciated is not the same as being understood. Being easy to love is not the same as being deeply met. Being included is not the same as being known. Some people are loved most for the very traits that cost them the most to build. That is the part almost no one talks about. Usefulness gets loved faster than complexity. Competence gets rewarded faster than honesty. And if you learned early that being pleasant, capable, undemanding, emotionally controlled, or endlessly understanding helped you keep connection, then usefulness can quietly become the rent you pay for belonging. You stop asking, "Do I feel safe here as myself?" and start asking, "How do I stay valuable enough to remain wanted?" That question can shape an entire personality. It can shape your voice, your timing, your boundaries, your humor, your softness, even your kindness, because not all kindness is freedom. Sometimes it is strategy. Not all patience is peace. Sometimes it is fear of what will happen if you take up your full emotional size. Not all maturity is wholeness. Sometimes it is what early self-suppression looks like after years of being praised. Not all flexibility is wisdom. Sometimes it is the old reflex of bending before anyone has to ask, and not all calm is peace. Sometimes calm is what freeze looks like after it learned good manners. Sometimes calm is what happens when anger gets folded so many times it no longer reaches your face. Sometimes calm is what happens when your body realizes that being easy on other people is safer than being true in the moment. Sometimes calm is what people call you when they have never seen the amount of inner compression it takes for you to stay that way. That is not always peace. Sometimes it is compression. Sometimes the person everyone calls grounded is just the person who learned to swallow urgency before it made anyone uncomfortable. Sometimes the person everyone calls wise is the one who was forced to understand too much too early. Sometimes the person everyone calls kind is the one who learned that self-removal keeps relationships smoother than self-expression ever did. And if you live inside that long enough, a terrifying question begins to form. What if this is not my personality? What if this is my adaptation after years of being rewarded? What if the person everyone says I am is the person I became to stay acceptable, manageable, employable, lovable, and emotionally non-disruptive? That is where the grief becomes deeper than pain, because then you are not only grieving what happened to you are grieving the self you never got to meet, the self who might have spoken sooner, the self who might have needed more openly, the self who might not have confused disappearing with maturity, the self who might have rested before the body had to force the issue, the self who might have said no without rehearsing guilt, the self who might have asked for comfort before resentment had to become the messenger, the self who might have laughed louder, wanted more, loved less carefully, and taken up more room in the world without feeling morally wrong for it. And this is where the grief gets almost unbearable, because you cannot fully know who that person would have been. You do not know what in you is essence and what in you is adaptation. You do not know how much of your personality was formed by taste and how much by threat. You do not know whether you are naturally private or whether privacy became your last safe room. You do not know whether you are truly low needs or whether needing simply became too humiliating to feel. You do not know whether you are calm or whether your body just got so used to compression that quiet started to look like character. That uncertainty is its own kind of mourning, because the loss is not only what life did, the loss is that you may have spent years becoming someone the world could handle while moving further and further away from someone who felt like home. And maybe that is the deepest wound of all. Not that you were hurt, not even that you adapted, but that the adaptation worked so well. It worked so well that people trusted it, admired it, relied on it, built their comfort on top of it, called it maturity, called it strength, called it your nature, and maybe you did too. There is a special grief in realizing that the self most rewarded by the world may be the self furthest from home. Maybe that is why this video only needed to find you once. Because once something is named accurately, it does not need to keep arriving in the same form to remain real. A recognition like this changes the shape of memory. It changes the way you hear your own voice, the way you read your exhaustion, the way you understand your silence, your competence, your distance, your calm, After that, even if life looks the same on the outside, it is no longer entirely the same inside you. You cannot fully return to the old innocence of misnaming what has been happening to you. And that may bring more than relief. It may bring sadness, fatigue, even grief. You are allowed that. You are allowed to feel the weight of realizing how much of you was built in negotiation with pressure. You are allowed not to know, yet, who you are without the adaptation. You are allowed to feel tender toward the part that kept your life moving, even if it also kept your inner life waiting outside the door. Nothing in this moment requires you to solve yourself. Some recognitions are not instructions, they are thresholds. And perhaps this is one of them. Because if the part of you that kept life running is also the part that kept you from fully arriving, then what exactly have you been calling strength all these years? And if survival shaped your personality so well that even love mistook it for you, then what is it you are grieving now, the wound or the life that formed around it? Sit with that, not because an answer must come tonight, but because some questions are too honest to be rushed. And sometimes a single moment of being seen clearly is enough to begin changing the way a person walks through the rest of their life. If this reached you at the right moment, stay close to the work of seeing yourself clearly. Sometimes that is how a different life begins.